Happy Hump Day evening, YouTube. Back at you with a review on some stuff I've been up to lately. As per the last vlog of this variety that I did, I was pretty book heavy because, as you know, I've been outside a lot, sitting around the pool, reading books. I like to be outside all day, so that's kind of naturally what comes out of it. But actually, I notice it's inevitable that no matter how nice a July you have, as soon as August hits, it's like immediately, the sun sinks a bit lower, the nights get a bit cooler, the heat waves go away, the rain starts to come back a little more, so I can already feel the end of the summer kind of starting to set in, right? So that's kind of upsetting, so that might affect how much time I spend outside. But anyways, for now, we're still full on book learning. But actually, this one starts off with a movie. I was recently down visiting some friends for the first time in many, many months due to COVID, and we watched the first night of the playoffs. We watched a ton of hockey, and then the next morning, as we recovered from our booze-filled hockey fest, we watched a movie in the morning to kind of relax, and that movie was the remake of Pet Sematary. This remake was released in 2019, and it followed the basic premise of the original Pet Sematary movie from the 80s that was based on the book by Stephen King. So it's a young family, Lewis, who is an ER doctor in Boston, his wife Rachel, their eldest child, their daughter Ellie, and then their young son Gage. They moved to a small town called Ludlow, Maine, to get away from Boston and the hectic lifestyle there, so that the parents can spend more time with the kids. Lewis can de-stress a bit from that type of job environment, and they can just hopefully lead a happier life. Along with the family is Ellie's beloved cat Church, who she spends a ton of time with, and who sleeps with her and all that stuff. So as they get to this new kind of farmhouse, almost, it's like, they have many acres of land, too many acres of land really to ever truly know what they have. And early on in their time there, Ellie goes off exploring and discovers a pet cemetery. Now, while she's exploring this pet cemetery, a kindly old man named Judd warns her away from a big pile of sticks and tree trunks and stuff that she's trying to climb, and befriends the girl and seems to have a really soft spot for her. So the family settles into a new routine and everything, and Judd slowly becomes part of their life. And until one day when Judd notices Church has been hit by one of the big tanker fuel trucks that zip through the road near that separate their houses there. So Lewis is like, oh crap, because his wife has some stuff going on with some death-related issues from her invalid sister from when she was young, and the two of them differ in their opinions on how to present death and stuff like that to their children. So they cover up the truth, and Judd's like, we'll bury Church tonight at the pet cemetery. As they're going about burying Church, Judd goes, oh, come on, let's take him somewhere else. So they go to this piece of land that is really mysterious and kind of sinister, and Judd makes Lewis go through the ceremony of burying this cat there. And the next day, Church is back at the house. He looks like he's been through the ringer, but he is indeed alive. Now, he's not quite the same, though. He's a little more temperamental, let's say. He even scratches Ellie and stuff like that. And as time goes by, he gets even worse, and he scares Gage, and Lewis is like, this cat's got to go. And so he does two things. A, he confronts Judd and says, just what the hell happened here? How did this cat come back to life? And Judd explains that the land, there's something sour about the land, something different, something beyond explanation. But Judd has personal experience with bringing beings back to life, and he couldn't stand to see how disappointed Ellie was that Church had disappeared, and he just he wanted Ellie to be happy. So he had a little lapse and led Lewis to do this kind of ceremony for Church. And after that, Lewis goes and drops Church off deep in the woods, saying, "You're on your own, buddy, but we can't have you at home if you're gonna act like that." So Ellie's birthday party comes, and she's really sad because Church has gone missing. And but during the birthday party, after Lewis kind of cheers her up a bit, she sees Church trotting down the road. He has come home, and so her and Gage rush out to see him. And as this is happening, a tanker truck comes flying through, and Ellie is killed. Rachel can't stand it. She can't stand being in the house with all that's happened, so she takes Gage to go and visit her parents in Boston, leaving Lewis all alone. And you know where it's going with this, right? He brings Ellie back, the same process that he did with Church. But as with Church, when Ellie comes back, she's not quite the same. Not quite the same as in a homicidal maniac. So the kind of film culminates in this bloodbath at their house that kind of, you have to watch it to see how it all resolves. But I really like this remake because when I first saw the trailers and stuff for it, I thought, oh, it's just going to be a straight up remake of Pet Sematary, just a modern looking one. And it is that, but they change up a few of the major kind of sequences and details behind the characters that really makes, especially the ending of it, very much different from the original Pet Sematary. So although they're the same movie, they've got big differences between them. So I thought that was kind of fresh and cool and a nice way to kind of steer this one in a different direction than the first one, the original one. So great movie, I highly recommend. Next up, my mom got this for me for, I don't know, maybe my last birthday or Christmas or something. It's a book called Beartown. It focuses on hockey, but also life in general. It takes place in a small Swedish town called Beartown, obviously. I'm not sure if it's real or not. I assume it's fictional, but who knows. It's a very small town that's been hit hard in the last number of years as the world kind of modernizes and everything. Beartown is going backwards. They're a little more primitive. They're losing people, like they're losing jobs to bigger towns and stuff like that. So, but the people there are proud. All they have there really is cold, various types of drinks, and hockey. So they're a hard people, and currently though their junior team, the Beartown Bears, I guess, I don't even know, Bears, it must be. They have the best team they've ever had, and they're actually almost got through to the championship. They're currently set to play a semifinal game against a team that's technically a lot better than them, but the Beartown Juniors play a really disciplined positional game and have been able to beat much superior opponents in the past using that. They do have one really star player that lights the lamp, Kevin. His best friend Benji is kind of the guy that protects him, and then the rest of the team goes from there. Bobo, the big bully defenseman, that sort of thing. Like I said, though, this book isn't all just about hockey. It starts off that way, and you get to know the team's GM, Peter Anderson, and get to know his family, his daughter Maya, their son, I forget their son name, Leo, and his wife, and I forget her name. I read this one a while back. So it starts off hockey, and as it leads up to this semi-final game, you kind of get a background on all the main players in Beartown, not just the hockey people, but the owner of the local tavern who sponsors the team, and the same guy that owns the supermarket chain and sponsors the team, coaches, stuff like that. So Beartown has a really good game in the semifinals, beats this team, and later that night all the kids go to Kevin's house for a party where he rapes the GM Peter's daughter Maya. And Beartown is a place where you don't really talk about that kind of stuff, and at first she kind of hides it, but eventually comes out to her parents, and then they contact the police, and that just so happens to be on the day of the actual final, when the Beartown team is supposed to take part in the final, and Kevin is pulled off the bus and taken to the police station just before it leaves town to go play the game. So everybody's up in arms, and Beartown being that small, maybe I don't want to offend any small towners, but they're maybe not the most worldly of views. They automatically dismiss Maya as a lying slut, and that her dad was involved and he wanted to sabotage his own team and all this stuff. So it's after this comes out, the book becomes less about hockey and more about all of these personal relationships and the way these people interact with each other, and the way this whole situation comes to a resolution, because there are a couple of people, a couple of guys on the hockey team that witnessed some of the events from the party that could come out and provide some evidence if they so choose to. So it's just kind of the end of the book is how everything kind of unravels from there. Very good book, very interesting, and very interesting take on hockey and its role and life and stuff like that. I thought it was very neat how everything was presented in this book and stuff like that. So there's actually a sequel that I don't think there's much hockey in it from the sounds of it, but it's more moving on past this incident, and I think it focuses maybe on Maya and her friend Anna as they move forward with their lives after this. So I would be interested in reading that, because this was a really really fast novel. Like they kind of hook you on stuff right at the start with a couple of paragraphs that explain what happens at the end of the book, and you're like, what? How does it get to this point? And then it makes you just flip through the book to try and get to that end and see exactly how everything kind of unfolds. So really good book. Next, another Marvel book, Black Widow, Red Vengeance. So this book is all about Black Widow and some other characters. So it kind of takes place between a series of interviews between Agent Phil Coulson and Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow, as they gloss over of recent events that kind of spiraled out of control. So the scene kind of starts off in New York City as Natasha and Ava, the Black Widow and the Red Widow, are at a parade outside of Rockefeller Center in New York City, and they're trying to stop some sort of unknown threat from happening that could wipe out a ton of people. And from there, it kind of goes back in time to explain how they got to that point. It starts off in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, when Natasha and Ava are in the region, and they're hunting for leads on the Red Room. Now, the Red Room is the organization in Russia that kind of trained Natasha to become the Black Widow, like to gain all those lethal skills and whatnot. But it was not a pleasant experience. It's not a nice, it's not a normal training sort of facility. It's nasty. It's Russian mobsters that run this thing and control the girls and do all sorts of bad stuff. So they have already in the past offed the leader of the Red Room, Ivan Samodorov, but the Red Room is still at large, and there's still lots of people involved, and they want to see this mission through. And the main reason they want to do this is that Natasha's brother Alexei, who was also Ava's boyfriend, was killed by the Red Room. So they have a personal stake in wanting to end this threat. So in Rio, they run into this mysterious woman who kind of attacks them. And so then they go on a bit of a chase. They gain some intel. They interrogate some guy that they kind of get a lead on, which eventually draws them deeper into the Brazilian jungle, where they find this warehouse in the middle of nowhere that's just blended right into the landscape. And they infiltrate it, and they find out that it is all Red Room stuff, and it's actually Ivan's brother Yuri Samodorov who is controlling this operation. And inside the warehouse they find a handful of nuclear missiles, some strange substance that looks like a drug that they've never seen before, and they barely escaped with their lives upon being discovered. And the Black Widow is actually able to pop Yuri, so that's another Samodorov dead. And eventually they get back to Shield New York and Shield headquarters, and kind of they go over all the details, but they're very confused as to what exactly the Red Room is up to. Soon enough, though, the nuclear missiles begin to be launched one by one at really weird kind of targets. This drug that they saw in the warehouse is all of a sudden on the streets in New York City, and it seems to have some sort of mind control properties to it. So they've got all these connections and stuff. They just don't know how they all fit together, and who exactly this girl was they found in Brazil that seems to be a main player behind the whole scenario. So it all leads to this final confrontation at Tony Stark's Parade of Heroes, when this villain kind of makes her master stroke known, and so the Black Widow and the Red Widow and also Tony Stark and Captain Marvel are all involved in kind of the final battle to save the city and countless thousands of people from digging themselves all an early grave. So good book. I was not aware of the Red Widow. I've never heard. I thought there was only one Black Widow and there wasn't any more widows, but I guess I was wrong with that. So I'll be interested to see if they gave a bit of background on the Red Widow, but it sounds like there's another book that came before that one, so maybe there's more stuff on her in there. But I would be interested to see if she's like a viable enough character to eventually make an appearance in one of the Marvel movies, because I'm not familiar with her at all. So it was kind of cool to see, a new character. Next up, I found this series of books actually at Dollarama, maybe last year. It's been a while. I've had them sitting in my giant pile of books for a while, but it's by an author, P.D. Bacalario, that I read a series of books on a number of years ago that I really enjoyed. And it is book one of the Enchanted Emporium series called Stairway of Stars. This story takes place in a small town called Applecross in Scotland and focuses on a young boy named Finley McPhee. Finley is kind of a dreamer, he's not into school, he doesn't get it, he doesn't care, and he takes days off school, unbeknownst to his parents, to go fishing down at the stream. And, his plan's working out well, nothing's really happened, but right near the end of school, the headmistress or headmaster or whatever of the school pays his house a visit and fills his parents in on how much school Finley has missed, and so he's in big trouble. His parents take him to the Reverend Prospero, who gives Finley a talking to, and to atone for missing all this school, he kind of he says, well, you better do some work this summer. So he sets him up with a series of jobs. Some go okay, some don't go quite so okay, but eventually he settles in as the town's new temporary mailman, because the previous one had an accident and sprained his ankle, broke his ankle, something like that. So Finley's the new mailman, and he's actually quite enjoying it because he gets to be outside, riding around on a bike with his beloved dog Patches, so life is good. And it's summer, so there's no school too, so he doesn't have to go there if he chose to. However, one day he has to deliver a letter to an establishment called the Enchanted Emporium in a region of Applecross that he's never heard of. So he starts asking around, like, do you know where the hell this place is? And eventually he gets some guidance, and he goes there, and he meets a young woman named Abby, I guess her name is. It's A-I-B-Y. Last name Lily. Who quite enchants him. Speaking of Enchanted Emporiums, he's under her spell, and he really likes this girl, and he delivers the letter to her, and they chat for a while, and the next time they meet, he doesn't really remember what exactly happened when he met her at the Enchanted Emporium, and as the two begin to talk and stuff, they go on a few different little adventures where Abby kind of slowly reveals the truth to Finley that her family are the protectors of the Enchanted Emporium, which is a shop that specializes in the purchasing and selling of magical items. So AB has all sorts of items that Finley is amazed by, and he even saw her dad walking in this pair of magical pants and some other things too. And so slowly he begins to believe AB, and then eventually they go on their biggest adventure, where this kind of insane, gibberish spouting man awakens a giant from an old haunted castle that he plans to set loose on the Enchanted Emporium to destroy it. Oh, excuse me. So the Lilly family is tasked with protecting the Enchanted Emporium, but there's lots of people out there who don't want it to exist. So there's a reason why people are there to protect it. So Finley and AB and another person from town, the local dressmaker, have to face this giant and this psychopath down to try and save the Emporium. And in the end, AB's worried that, is Finley going to want to hang around with me, and is he cool with all this? Like, he could have died, and it turns out in the end they end up becoming, the best of friends, and he can't wait for more adventures. And we know there's going to be more because there's 3 more books in the series, so those will all be coming soon. So great little story, great little. That's what I really liked about this guy's first series. It's really. It takes place outside of the normal regions where my stories always do, His first one took place in a small town in Italy, I believe. This one takes place in a small town in Scotland. Like, they're a little more worldly and very imaginative types of stories, which I always like. I like the whole fantasy element of stuff where anything can happen, right? So, good series, good book. Next up, the last book on this list, DeathDay by William C. Dietz. This was given to me by a family friend a number of years ago, probably, and I just couldn't get around to it until COVID. It's kind of like here, Kevin J. Anderson, who is an author who has written many young Star Wars books and stuff like that, quotes, "Great reading for anyone who loved Independence Day or the War of the Worlds." So it's that type of movie, book. On February 28th, 2020, an alien race called the Saurons invade Earth, and with no warning, none of humanity saw it coming, and they're very efficient in their strikes. They hit certain targets to destroy, spare certain other ones because they have plans for these, and soon enough, the majority of the Earth's population are either enslaved or killed. So they convince, I guess, one of the higher up people in government, who is, I believe, a governor or something like that of Washington, to become their liaison between the Saurons and the human race, because the president is killed and he's kind of the next guy in line after after the president was also killed. So he's looked at mostly as a collaborator for most of the human race, but overall he wants to try and help the human race survive this and try and make things more comfortable for them. And it's explained that all the Saurons want is for the human race to build them a series of temples across the world that they need to be built before they can move along to the next planet in their path, because they're on some sort of galactic pilgrimage. So that's the story they give the humans, and Franklin tries to get the humans to acquiesce and just do the best they can, and he'll try and help them be comfortable and live through it. But the humans aren't having it. A number of resistance groups pop up, a white supremacy group, a group of ex-army rangers, the guy that's tapped to be Franklin's head of security and his forces. There's a whole bunch of people in play that have the potential to fight back against the Saurons and try and get them off the planet and not wait for them to be done their towers and then however many years of enslavement that's going to be, right? They want to fight back and fight for their planet and fight for their freedom in their lives. Now, it's a pretty daunting task when they're outnumbered and whatnot by these aliens, but an opportunity presents itself. The Saurons themselves are divided up into three different species, I guess. There's the head guys, the Zin, who are dark, like bug-looking aliens. Then there's the Khan, who are similar dark kind of bug-like aliens, but they're not. Their memories aren't as good as the Zins. They can't read and write. And then you have the Fawn, who are similar to the Khan, except they have lighter coloring and not the darker coloring. And then after that, there's the Rana, who are just totally different. They're furry skinned aliens that are kind of subservient to all the Saurons and provide a lot of their support and stuff like that. They're basically slaves, but not treated as badly as the humans, I guess. So the humans notice that the Saurons are treating the darker skinned humans better than the lighter skinned ones. So this kind of presents an opportunity for the humans to contact some of the lower Saurons and maybe collaborate with them against their overlords, and eventually the truth comes out what the Saurons are really doing with these structures that are being built, which just makes these resistance groups and these deals want to happen even faster, because the truth is much worse than what the Saurons first presented to them on why they have enslaved the human race. So it's kind of a countdown to a destruction day that's coming, and what the humans are going to do before then, if they possibly can. Now, it was not a bad book, but on nowhere on this book does this say like book 1 of however so many. I got to like page, how many pages are there? There's like 353 pages or something like that. I got to page 340 and I was like, okay, this story can't be resolved in 14 pages. Like, a whole bunch of shit still up in the air. So apparently there's another one that comes after this, maybe more. I'm not sure, but the story is not over in this. It's just kind of about to turn a page as this book ends. So I'm not sure I'll ever know what happens, because I couldn't even find that one listed on chapters. Like, who knows? But either way, it was an interesting read, an interesting take on a alien invasion story with the whole race relations brought into it and that sort of thing. But overall, a solid book, but not anything special. Last up, this thing is amazing. The game that I have finished recently for the Nintendo Switch would be Luigi's Mansion 3. Now, if you've never played the Luigi's Mansion series, the original Luigi's Mansion on Nintendo GameCube is one of my all-time favorite games. It was so different at the time. It was so well done, so well developed, and just so much fun that I've played through it a few times over the course of the years. And the second one was on the Nintendo 3DS, Dark of the Moon or whatever, Bad Moon Rising, whatever. And it was good, but it's a handheld game, so it can't really compare to how good the original on GameCube was. So when I heard they were doing number 3 on the Switch, I was ecstatic, and they did not disappoint. The story is that Luigi and his best friends, so his brother Mario, the Princess Peach, and then a few different Toads, have been invited to this hotel by the hotel's owner, Helen Gravely, to have a little visit and take a load off. They get there, and then they settle in for the first night, and Luigi is woken up in the middle of the night, and he is terrified in the dark hotel, and he goes out to explore and finds out that all of his friends have been kidnapped. They are not in the hotel anymore, and worst of all, there are ghosts everywhere. So Luigi then has to tramp through this hotel and try and find his friends, who are all trapped in paintings, and get the hell out of there. So along the way, Professor Egad, he frees him, and then Egad sets up a little lab as a base of operations where he upgrades Luigi's poltergust and that sort of thing, and he eventually one by one rescues his friends from the paintings that they're trapped in. And the cool thing about this one is that the hotel, of course, has tons of floors, like 15 floors, plus a couple basements. And each floor has a theme. There's an Egyptian theme in one, there's a pirate theme in the other, medieval. Every floor is different, and in every floor is missing its elevator button at the outset, with the exception of a couple of different floors. So you have to find the buttons for the different floors on the elevator and install them in order to access that floor. And of course, the buttons are always being held by boss ghosts on each floor. So you just have to work your way through each floor. Sometimes you have to come back and revisit stuff every once in a while, but mostly it's pretty straightforward. But the floors themselves are all basically, for the most part, really puzzly. Like, there's a lot of figuring out sometimes to really know where you gotta go. And the puzzles are really fun, really clever. And the boss fights, there's a lot of different looks on that. The game was just really well thought out. The graphics are fantastic. The gameplay is amazing. It's just amazing. I hope they kick out some more Luigi's Mansion game, or maybe even do a crossover with something else. I think that'd be cool, because these are just fantastic games. So if you have a Switch and are thinking of a game to play, and you haven't played Luigi's Mansion 3, I highly recommend getting it. It's going to always be expensive, so just suck it up and get it, but you won't be disappointed. It's well worth it. And yeah, so I think that's it. Those 6 items were the last bit of stuff I've done, but I'm sure I'm, of course, going to have more books in the near future with whatever else might come along with it. But until the time comes, stay happy. So long.